we understand kind of what we're looking for, right? Uh, when we do all of this, we're going to be placing multiple anchors over and over and over again, and you're going to have more time practicing placements, so that's not done. So we still are not done on that aspect of it, and there's still going to be a lot of uh, criticism from me, but that's part of the game, right?
Where we're gonna learn.
But uh, what we need to do now is bring everything together. Now, you may see that some of the anchors here are just a bunch of ropes. I mean, it's actually not super busy. Uh, in the middle of summer, it's crazy, and like people will actually have rope tied to trees across from the trail, so people are stepping over their anchor rope. Like I would say 80% of the climbs here can be placed with gear. We will talk about slinging trees or boulders as a means of a piece of protection, but the reason why we teach the course using protection like this is because it does translate into traditional leading, multi-pitch climbing. There's more knowledge into this. I could take you up here and be like, oh, you can tie this tree, that tree, and you're good. That's kind of what half of that other class did. They literally learned how to tie trees, and they're like, all right, cool, we're off. It's very simple. It's not that hard, but the skills that you're going to learn now are going to be, they're going to come pretty quick, and you should feel relatively confident on that. But when we set an anchor, especially a traditional style anchor, we want to set it with 3 pieces. Why do you think we want 3 pieces of gear?
Redundancy.
Redundancy, yeah.
In case the other two fail.
Really, it's in case one fails, then you have 2. Then if the other one fails, well. But we're not going to get to that point. But we set 3 pieces of gear for redundancy. Whether it's 3 pieces of traditional gear or 2 pieces and a tree, we always want to set 3 for that extra added redundancy. Now, when we're looking at setting an anchor, it is actually fairly simple. And of course, I grabbed like the nut sizes that won't fit. Oh, there's one. What we're looking for is when we are making our placements, we're being concise, we're placing them appropriately. And I'm going to do this, and I'm talking, and I'm just doing this to show you how simple and easy it can be. But you want to just take a look and analyze kind of what you're looking at and what we're going to set. And obviously, when you're not at the edge of a cliff, it feels a little bit different. But you just want to make sure that you're getting everything kind of everywhere where it should be, and should be good. Cool. So now I got 3 pieces of gear. That's how fast it took me to set that. While I do this, I'm going to continue to talk, and I'm going to not talk about any of the steps that I'm doing, just to show you how easy this is. But when I do it, I like to talk about how the fact that I have taught this class, it has to be over 100 times now, so, because I've been doing it for quite a while. But what I'm looking for is, while I'm teaching this class, obviously everybody to regain some of the knowledge. Sometimes people take this course multiple times, which is fine, okay. But while I do this, we did the nuts, we did the cams, we had lunch, and now I'm doing this. I've had it where somebody took that long to set up one anchor in the time that I taught the whole class how to place gear and then also how to set an anchor. So the big thing is, if you're comfortable with it and you're confident with your gear, it's not that hard. It's very simple. It's something that you can come out and do and have an enjoyable time. And it's something that, you know, if we're driving from the Twin Cities or we're driving from Chicago or the suburbs, I mean, how long did it take everybody to get here?
About
3 hours.
2.5.
3 hours, 2.5, like maybe 3.5 hours.
3.5 to 4, yeah.
You're looking at a lot of time on the road, and we're not done yet because we all got to go back home. So you want to set up an anchor that's relatively easy to set up so we can do more than just one climb at a time, right? Or I should say more than just one in the day. There's an anchor. That's it.
Nicely done.
I'm going to reverse it now, and we're going to talk about it. This traditional three-piece style anchor is also the exact same thing that you would see that anybody would do on a multi-pitch route on El Cap. It's the exact same thing. But we have now got to talk about the basics of it. I've got the 3 pieces of gear. I have 2 cams up at the top, 1 nut down here. With every nut, it's got that wire. You need to attach a carabiner to it. That carabiner generally should be attached to a quick draw. This style of quick draw is actually called an alpine draw because instead of the regular dog bone that you would normally see in the gym, that's fixed length. What you can do with an alpine style draw with that sling is unclip, then clip just one strand and lengthen it. It's a way to lengthen your anchor. And the cool thing, to get it right back, pass the carabiner through and just clip it back to the 2 strands and you're back to a shorter draw. These are very nice to have in an anchoring situation because you can extend that anchor a little bit further out. But you never want to put what I'm going to talk to you about next, the cordelet, through the wire. Fabric through this wire will cut like that. It's like a knife through butter. Every cam needs to have a carabiner. It doesn't need to have a quick draw, but it just needs to have a carabiner. So we've got 3 attachment points. I need to bring that all together. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my wonderful cordelet. This is 8mm cord. It's static cord. This cord, since it's static, doesn't stretch. You don't want to use climbing rope or a dynamic rope for an anchor because of that stretch, because it adds more force to your anchor. You want to keep it statically, because when you're top roping, where is all the force being generated? Down. Yeah, it's down. And if your anchor is set properly, will anybody climb above it? No, nobody should climb above it. So that force is just consistently being down. You can have some pretty high forces, but not that much. But what I'm going to do is I need to attach these 3 pieces to this cordelet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take a bite right here and a tail. And everybody's familiar with the figure 8 follow through, correct? What we're going to do is tie a figure 8 on a bite. So it's as if you're tying a figure 8 knot, but you're using both strands. You take the bite and pass it through on the cordelet. So, looks like a good figure 8, right? Cool. Nice strong knot. Now what I'm going to do is tie that, or clip that to one of my outside pieces. We're always going to clip to the outside piece and the opposite outside piece first. It just makes it easier. So generally it's in this way. You can see that you have the top right and the bottom left. I've also done this. This is also appropriate. This is just an overhand on a bite. You can also do this with the cordelet, but I'm just showing you guys the 8 on a bite because it takes up a little bit more of the cord.
The 8 would be better.
Really, it doesn't really come down to strength because the forces that are being applied to the anchor aren't that high, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But the overhand, if it does get tight, it's a little bit harder to undo. So I've got my two pieces clipped on the outside. I can take any part of the cordelette that's down on the ground and clip to my middle piece. So now that I have all three pieces of gear clipped, I can take my cordelette and bring it all together. What I'm doing, can everybody see kind of what I'm doing?
Mm-hmm.
What am I doing? Am I making it all even?
Yeah, equalizing it.
I'm equalizing my anchor. Now, when we do it over the edge, it's going to be a little bit different. But when we're just standing right here, or you're on the flat ground, we're just going to just try to get it even and then tie our knot. But we're not going to just clip. Oh, that's one thing I forgot. It's over in the backpack. Locking carabiner. We're not just going to clip a carabiner to it right now. Also, never just use a single wire gate for an anchor. That's terrible. But why would I not want to just be like, okay, cool, I got three pieces and I'm going to set my anchor now? And just clip it like that. Any guesses?
Because if one breaks,
Yeah, Sam, do you want to hold on to that for me real quick?
your rope
Yeah.
your rope length changes.
So, what happens if this fails? Now pull. And then if you really wanted to do more, it could go all the way through and really
still got two.
completely come undone. Because it's not equal or it's not redundant. The redundancy is brought by what is called a master point. The master point is the most critical part of your anchor system. The master point does need to be over the edge. But the quick thing, just like I did with the knots up at the top, that figure eight on a bite, I'm going to make sure that all of my pieces are equal. And then what I can do is I can even just do this, because it's still equal, right? I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to tie a figure eight on a bite. Now, it's even more strands of rope. There's my anchor, hanging over the edge, just like that. Now, in the email I sent you, we talked about a little acronym called EARNEST. And EARNEST is the way to do your double check before you even start playing. To check your anchor to make sure everything is running properly. Now, with the E, we already talked about it, but what do you think E stands for?
Equalized.
Equalize. So we're making sure that all of the gear is being pulled at an equal force. Now, when we break it down mathematically, I'm going to do a very, very easy math problem here. Say the weight of the rope and the climber is 150 pounds. If everything is equalized, how much should each piece actually be bearing? 50. So, on all the gear, we have what's called the strength ratings, and it's in kilonewtons. How much is 1 kilonewton? And a kilonewton is a rate of force. It's not just a solid weight, but it's force. But how many pounds of force is 1 kilonewton? And it's funny because if we just had the metric system, it'd be a lot easier to figure.
25,
Nope.
50.
It's not 2.2 corresponding to kilograms.
I mean, you're close.
Oh,
You are close. You just got to move that decimal point a little bit. Over.
22?
Nope.
Two-
It's about 224 pounds of force, one for 1 kilogram. So if we were to look at the carabiner here, and you're going to see on the spine, what does it say?
23 kilonewtons,
23 kilonewtons pulling on that, right?
Yeah.
40,000 pounds.
this is strong. It's very strong. So think of 150 pounds of force, but then all that gear. Even if that climber was to fall very far and fast onto the anchor, it still will not remotely get close to the braking strength of the pieces here. But we have that equalization for that point. The next thing that we're looking for is also kind of going on to the mathematics of it, is A. And what do you think A stands for?
Angle.
Nope. Angles.
Oh, yeah.
Angles are very important when setting up anchors. We like to see nice acute angles within our anchor. If I was to say have this nut but place it over here, what am I doing now?
Force isn't equal between
Yeah, most of
It's
the
being pulled down, but now it's trying to pull out as well. So it's pulling out and down. So it's putting actually more force on the outer pieces, and it's exacerbating that force. It greatly increases the force instead of it being just right here, nice and confined. So we want to make sure that our angles are less than 45 degrees, pretty much. If you have it larger than that, you exacerbate the force on the outside pieces of gear. And if they're not placed properly, or even if they are and somebody is to fall, it can pull harder because there's more force being applied to those outward pieces opposed to just the 33%, it's going up higher. So we have our equalization, we have our angles. Now we're going into R. What do you think R stands for?
Redundancy.
Redundancy. Now, this is a trick question. Where is all of our redundancy?
three different
Three
Protection.
different-
Everything.
Everything, everywhere, all at once?
Yes.
Yes. So we've built actually kind of a double redundancy to this system because we have three pieces of gear. So if one was to go, now I'm just gonna, I know it's shifting and it's not super even all the time, but if one cam is to go, did it really move? But more of that redundancy is also within this knot. Very important that you have it, and that it's always set like that. We have three pieces here, and the redundancy is then brought home with our finishing knot, or anchor knot. Then we're also going to have, so we have E, A, R, and then NE is actually kind of a double word here, but it means no extension. What I mean by that is, I kind of already showed you, but if one piece was to go, the anchor, of course it's button. One piece is to go, doesn't move, right? Now why do you think that's important? There are a few reasons, but there's one main reason.
reduces the forces on the two remaining pieces.
It does, and it actually adds force to the two, but
Versus
if the anchor doesn't move though, it's now just two pieces carrying the load. But if I had an anchor that was here, or I'm going to say it was here, and then a piece fell out and went like that, what then happens to those other two pieces?
it lengthens and it
Lengthens.
shocks the climber.
And it shocks the gear.
The gear.
It'll shock the climber too, but it'll shock load the gear. And what that can do is it'll shift the gear in the wall. And if you continue to climb on it, it can result in very dangerous things. Somebody has died from this as a result of this type of problem. It was a woman who was climbing out in Joshua Tree. She fell on the top rope. A piece of gear came out of the wall. They went up, and instead of checking all the pieces of gear and resetting everything, they literally just put the other piece in. They were like, okay, cool, we're doing it. You can climb a second time. She climbed up, fell again at the same spot. The whole thing flew. Because the two other pieces got shock loaded and shifted. Enough for them to still be in the wall, but not enough to hold another fall like that. And regardless of the third piece, everything went down. And she fell and she died. So we always want to make sure that when we set that anchor is if any one of these pieces was to go, we're going to have little to no extension. So no extension. Now we're getting into S in earnest. What do we think S stands for? It's the word that we hate using in climbing.
Sloper.
No. Any other guesses? Safe or safety.
Right.
Now, when you're setting up your anchor, when we're doing this right here, we're going to be standing on flat ground, right? It's pretty easy. There's no risk. When you guys actually go over there and start doing it, your brain is going to flip because you're at the edge of a cliff line. And you want to make sure that you are being as safe as possible. So either anchoring yourself to a piece of gear or a tree while you're setting the anchor if you feel uncomfortable. But we want to make sure that setting up the anchor is safe. Then we also want to look at the gear. Is the gear that we are setting safe? So we're double checking to make sure that this nut has good coverage. It's well set. It will not fall down. I'm making sure that my cam lobes are properly cammed. Making sure that my knots are tied properly. Everything's connected. I have my master point. I would have my carabiner here for the anchor. But also the positioning of the carabiners as well. You may notice that this one's kind of hovering pretty close to this rock, right? But I have the gate up. If your carabiner is close to a rock surface or on it, you always want to be on the brake side of things and always have your carabiner facing toward the sky, facing toward the sun. Because if it's flipped and it's dragging on the rock, I'm going to try to do it. All right, it's not really going to drag there. But what can happen is that if it rubs against the rock, the gate can actually open. So you want to mitigate that by flipping the carabiners up so the gates are out and not obstructed. Also making sure that nothing's over an edge. Sometimes you'll run into an anchor where the carabiner will be on an edge. Oops. Like this. But weighted. Is that bad?
Yeah.
There are multiple reasons why that's bad. One, the gate can open by being rubbed, but it's also being called what's called tri-loaded. So it's being pulled on its spine axis, but then it's also being pushed by the rock. And that can snap a carabiner like that. It's very, very important to make sure that all of your carabiners are not running over an edge. A cam, it can run over an edge. It can bend over an edge. A nut, it can kind of go, it can go around an edge like that if you needed it to. But everything should be in what's called the direction of force. So when I set the cams, I'm setting it to come directly to where my anchor point's going to go. That cam directly to where my anchor is going to go, and this nut to where my anchor is going to go. So we have that safety. We did that double check. And then the last thing is T. And does anybody know what that means?
Trust.
Trust? No. I mean, I guess we could like be like T squared, but I trust this. But timely. Like I said, we drove 3 hours to get up here. You're gonna drive 3 hours to go back home. And you want to come out here and do more than just one climb a day. You want to do some more, but also there's like a hidden component of this timing aspect, and we may run into it. Hopefully not. Fingers crossed. But if the weather goes bad, if your anchor is a mess of webbing and rope, and you're just trying to get it, but it's starting to rain, it's kind of a pain, and you're putting other people at risk, right? And yourself. It rains, I go, cool. Step up here and take the cam out. There. And come on, pop up. Of course, it's going to set really well. Forget what I said. Never mind. There. It's done. There. It's in my pack. I'm gone. Also, what I just did, when you're taking your anchor apart, always just take the gear apart first, then deal with the rest of the mess. Why do you think that is? Any guesses?
Just so that the next person can climb.
No, not necessarily. But what happens if I did my whole anchor, undid everything, pulled all the gear out, and then I was dealing with this, and then somebody was like, oh, hey, cool, where are we going to go eat? Oh, yeah. Left the cam there. I have found 5 usable cams here.
Free loot.
It's called booty.
Booty.
Free booty. But if you just take everything off and have it all attached to the cord, you put it in your pack, and you're done. You can sort it later. That's an anchor. So now we're gonna jump into it, and we're gonna learn by trial by fire. Is everybody up for that?
Yep.
Cool. So if you want, I obviously have one cord here. I have 4 cordelettes. So that means everybody can set their own, or if you want to work in a group of 2 and decide to do that, I'm fine.